Two truths and a lie. This is often how cults and high control groups manipulate you. You've probably played the game before of two truths and a lie. It's where someone tells you three statements about themselves. Two have to be real and one of them has to be made up. And it's your job to try to figure out which one is the lie. It can be quite a fun game. A little harmless deception and usually a lot of laughs go along with it. But the thing is, when high control groups and cults play this game, they never reveal what the lie is. And it's a pattern of behaviour that we can see is done to members over and over and over again. Cults are actually really, really good at this. And so how does it actually work? Well, if we compare it to the party game, the lie is sandwiched between two truths, and that makes it harder to spot, especially when you're talking about truths which are extraordinary or unexpected. But because you know that some of what the person is saying is true, and often you know them, then this gives you a bit of confidence. And so when they say something, you can go, yeah, that checks out, I know them. And it lowers your guard a bit. And of course, in the genuine game, your mates are always going to tell you at the end what was real and what's not. Cult leaders and manipulative organisations use exactly the same structure. They'll lead with things that you already know to be true, maybe even things that you have lived experience with, or things that you can verify. And then once you're nodding along, they slip into the lie. Let's look at a religious example. So, for example, a pastor might stand up in front of his congregation and they may say, last week, Sarah Maria told me she'd been struggling with her health for months. We prayed over her together and this Sunday she's walked in healed. Now, maybe Sister Maria did feel better. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was some medication she started. Maybe she just started feeling better because her body was recovering naturally. But the way the pastor has framed it as direct divine intervention through him is where it becomes manipulative. And the truthful aspects that would be dealing with in this situation was Maria was sick, Maria did pray, and Maria recovered. And so in this instance, the truths are kind of wrapped around a lie that the pastor's prayers are what caused the healing, or that it was his connection to God that is special and exclusive. And there is a run-on effect of this because over time, people in that congregation may stop trusting doctors. They may stop trusting their own instincts, and they could start believing that their pastor does have a direct line to God or something greater than them. But it's not an accident. It's literally the same premise of the game, two truths and a lie, that is working exactly as it's intended to. The same sort of manipulation tactic can also be seen in conspiracy-based high control groups. First truth they might tell is the government is corrupt. Which, hey, we've all seen it. We've all seen examples of our own government or someone else's government acting in a corrupt manner through corporate lobbying or whatever. But the politicians never face consequences. This is real, this is documented. So you might be nodding along when you hear this, go, yep, that's true, and then you get given the next truth, that ordinary people feel unheard, that wages stagnate, that communities are in trouble, and that the people at the top seem to be completely insulated from any consequences. And the frustration of those two truths, which are totally valid and can be shared by lots of people, a really good priming for when the lies start coming in. Because right on the back of those two very real, legitimate observations may be something like maybe a lie along the lines of common people cannot create change through the current system, that voting doesn't work, that government institutions have some secret powers, or they could even go down the more extreme explanations of saying things like government is run by shape-shifting reptilians. In which case, well, it's even hard to say if that's a lie because there's really no way that any ordinary person could prove anything like that. But what happens in both of these examples is that you are then led to believe that the only solution forward is through this movement, through this particular leader or ideology. And so what's happening here is that your real pain or your real observations of what's happening are acknowledged and your real experience is validated. But the problem is that validation is then used to smuggle in a conclusion or a lie. It ultimately makes you dependent upon the group, and it cuts you off from other sources of support or your personal agency or autonomy. And so just like the game Two Truths and a Lie actually works because people are told some real truthful things, that sort of strategy works in recruitment scenarios and people are being manipulated to join a particular group. You're not constantly lied to, because if you were, no one would join. And it's often really hard to identify that even though you were told a lot of things that are true, between those are some really sneaky lies and even some half-truths or quarter-truths. And sometimes it might even be you get told 5 truths and then 1 half lie, or you might be told 2 truths, 2 lies. And so it's just really, really hard to tell because sometimes the truth is really bizarre. And sometimes lies do sound really, really ordinary. So I think at the end of the day, to really avoid being coerced or sucked into or manipulated into these groups is to never give away our personal agency to anyone. To never go, okay, this person, this group knows the absolute truth. Always question, always ask for proof, always look at alternative explanations, always look at alternative perspectives and alternative opinions. Keep questioning everything. Not because you don't want to trust, but because that is the way that you can actually protect yourself.